the Thunderbolt and the Towering Soul, on Grandeur of Thought and the Sublime in the Age of the Last Man. Among the surviving ruins of classical thought, Longinus's On the Sublime stands not as a fragment, but as a complete astonishment. It is a work that does what it describes. While Aristotle's Poetics systematizes and Horace's Ars Poetica advises, Longinus ignites. His treatise is itself an act of the very grandeur it defines, a profound meditation that elevates literary criticism from a technical craft into a philosophy of human potential. The central revolutionary thrust of On the Sublime is its redefinition of artistic power. For Longinus, the ultimate goal of language is not to persuade, nor to please, nor to instruct with grace, though these may occur. The goal is transport. The sublime is that excellence of language which lifts the soul. It is the moment when discourse ceases to be an arrangement of words and becomes an event, a force of nature that scatters everything before it like a thunderbolt, leaving in its wake not agreement, but awe, not admiration, but a kind of terrified wonder. This experience for Longinus is the highest proof of the human spirit's capacity to reach beyond itself, to touch the divine through the medium of thought and word. This is a crucial distinction. Beauty may be harmonious, elegant, and proportioned. The sublime is often excessive, abrupt, even dangerous. It speaks not to taste alone, but to the depths of the soul. Where beauty invites admiration, the sublime compels surrender. And at the heart of this phenomenon lies his master concept, grandeur of thought, megalophrosynē. This is the indispensable source, the first and most important fount of the sublime. Longinus insists that all other sources, passion, rhetorical figures, noble diction, dignified composition, are secondary, mere instruments that serve this primary inward condition. Part 1. The ontological gift, grandeur of thought as a natural aristocracy of spirit. Longinus places grandeur of thought above all other sources of sublimity. This is no accident. Language can be taught, figures of speech can be learned, rhythm can be practiced, but grandeur of thought is rooted in the very character and vision of the soul. It is not an art, but an ontology, not a skill, but a state of being. To be precise, it is a natural gift. It is the mark of what Longinus himself calls the great towering soul. This is a radical and, for many, an uncomfortable truth. It implies that the capacity for the sublime is not democratically distributed. It is not the reward for diligent study or technical mastery, though these have their place. It is, instead, the native endowment of a rare few. Grandeur of thought does not mean complexity, cleverness, or abstraction. It refers to a natural elevation of mind, an ability to conceive ideas worthy of greatness. Sublime thoughts are not contrived. They arise spontaneously from a soul accustomed to contemplating what is vast, noble, and enduring. The mind must already dwell among high things, fate, mortality, divinity, freedom, empire, eternity, before it can give them voice. Sublimity is the echo of a great soul, Longinus writes, and an echo presupposes an originating sound. A petty soul cannot produce this echo because it lacks the inner weight required to sustain it. Where thought is trivial, language collapses into decoration. This is why Longinus admires Homer, Plato, Demosthenes, and even Moses. In the famous example from Genesis, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He sees sublimity not in rhetoric, but in the audacity of conception. Creation expressed without explanation, effort, or ornament. Authority replaces argument. Command replaces description. The writer's soul had to be capable of holding the concept of creation ex nihilo before the words could carry that weight. This is the alchemy of the sublime, a process reserved for those whose inner constitution is not merely different in degree, but in kind. The sublime is a moral event. A petty, servile, or avaricious soul cannot produce it, for its inner world is incapable of generating the requisite voltage. A great style presupposes a great mind, he declares. The pursuit of the sublime becomes, therefore, a spiritual exercise reserved for a kind of natural aristocracy of spirit. Those rare beings who are born with the capacity to see what others cannot, to conceive what others dare not, and to speak what others cannot bear to hear. Part 2. The modern antithesis, the last man and the tyranny of das Man. Longinus's central claim, that the sublime emerges from a great towering soul and is inaccessible to the ordinary unthinking being, finds a devastating echo in modern philosophy. It serves as a prophetic diagnostic for the spiritual condition of our age, to understand where the sublime might and might not lie in our world. We must first diagnose the prevailing condition of the human spirit. 1. Nietzsche's last men. The abhorrence of heights. Nietzsche's last man in Thus Spoke Zarathustra is the precise antithesis of Longinus's sublime thinker. The last man is the end product of a society that has chosen safety, comfort, and petty pleasure over struggle, greatness, and risk. His motto is, "A little poison now and then that makes for pleasant dreams, and much poison at the end for a pleasant death." He has made everything small. His happiness is a state of contented, bovine equilibrium. For Longinus, the sublime scatters everything before it like a thunderbolt. The last man would flee the thunderbolt. He seeks not transport, but sedation, not elevation, but levelling. The daily rhythms, price hikes, family trips, social gatherings are not inherently petty, but they become the total horizon of existence for the last man. He is concerned with daily rhythms of life, leading lives without being conscious beings. His world is one of commentary, the bickering of Pakistani politics rather than creation, of consumption, the misuse of internet social applications rather than conception. The sublime requires a courage rather than calculation, a willingness to gaze into the abyss, to wrestle with fate, divinity, and eternity. The last man blinks, shrugs, and asks, "What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star?" He has extinguished the very capacity for the vast conception that is the wellspring of sublime thought. 2. Heidegger's Das Man, the social machinery of spiritual flattening. Heidegger's concept of Das Man, the they, in being and time, provides the social mechanism for this extinguishing. Das Man is the anonymous, impersonal authority of public opinion and the common sense of the age. It dictates how one thinks, what one finds important, how one behaves. One is concerned with price hikes, one goes on trips, one follows political commentary, one uses social media. This is the current of the time that totally shapes the unthinking being. To live in the mode of Das Man is to live inauthentically, to have one's concerns and reactions pre-packaged by the public sphere. It is the realm of the commonist, where the most social loving types thrive, because their value is derived from conformity and recognition within this flattened domain. For Heidegger, authentic being requires a break from Das Man, a confrontation with one's own individuality, finitude, and death. This is precisely the kind of solitary, profound confrontation that fuels Longinian grandeur of thought. The mind that dwells with mortality, freedom, and being itself is the mind capable of the sublime. The mind absorbed in Das Man is preoccupied with idle talk, curiosity, and ambiguity. The endless, superficial chatter of news cycles and social media feeds. It is a world of distraction, not depth, of information, not wisdom. 3. the digital amplification of the petty age has built the perfect engine for the reign of the last man and das Man, social applications. These platforms are engineered for the common, the immediate, the reactive, and the self-consciously performative. They reward wit, not wisdom, snark, not seriousness, trendiness, not timelessness. They fragment attention, making the sustained, contemplative focus necessary for sublime thought nearly impossible. They create a simulated public that is far more pervasive and invasive than anything Heidegger imagined. What is genius will always abhor, for it is, by its nature, uncommon, demanding, and often disruptive. The sublime thought does not thrive in an ecosystem designed for likes and shares. The platforms are temples to the ornament Longinus rejects. They are allergic to the Thunderbolt. The vast majority of humans, not innately equipped with the megalophrosynē of a towering soul, are not merely products of this environment, but its natural and willing inhabitants. They find comfort in the chatter, validation in the likes, and meaning in the minutiae. The sublime, by contrast, is an exile in its own time. Part 3. The solitary genius and the architecture of eternity. If the sublime cannot reside in the realm of das Man and the last man, where does it flee? It retreats, as it always has, into solitude. Not merely physical solitude, but the solitude of a consciousness that stands apart from the current of its age. The genius is solitary, because he stands apart from these ordinary lives. His solitude is not misanthropy, but a precondition for receiving signals that are drowned out in the public square. It is in silence that one hears the sublime. It is in stepping away from the current of the time that one can perceive the deeper, more permanent currents of human existence. This solitary mind does not ignore the price hike or the political bickering, but it sees them sub specie eternitatis, under the aspect of eternity. It asks not just how to solve this crisis, but what does this crisis reveal about power, justice, human nature, or the divine? It transforms the particular into the universal, which is the alchemy of grandeur of thought. This capacity is not a literary device, but a fundamental mode of consciousness. It is the ability to see the finite within the infinite, the particular within the universal, the self within the cosmic web. This is the common thread that unites the towering souls of history: Einstein, Spinoza, Hegel, Buddha, Leibniz, the imaginative archaeologist, and the solitary wanderer of mountain peaks. Each represents a distinct facet of the same rare jewel: the capacity for sublimity. 1. The cosmic scientific, Einstein, and the awe of the ordered universe. Consider Einstein. Here was a man whose mind did not merely calculate, it contemplated. His science was born not from a cold, mechanical curiosity, but from a profound and abiding sense of awe. He himself declared, "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of true art and true science. Whoever does not know it and can no longer wonder, no longer marvel, is as good as dead, and his eyes are dimmed." This is not the language of a mere technician. It is the language of a soul standing before the abyss of existence and finding it not terrifying, but magnificent. Einstein's grandeur of thought lay in his ability to hold in his mind the vast architecture of space-time, to see gravity not as a force, but as the curvature of the cosmos itself. He perceived the universe as a unified, rational, and beautiful whole, a perception that required an intellectual courage and imaginative reach far beyond the ordinary, to look at the night sky and see not scattered points of light, but the very fabric of reality bending and flowing. That is the sublime. And crucially, Einstein's vision was deeply informed by a Spinozist sense of the eternal. He wrote, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists. This is the mindset of subspecie aeternitatis, viewing reality not from the petty perspective of human concerns, but from the standpoint of eternity itself. Spinoza's own philosophy demanded this, to understand that the human being is not an empire within an empire, but a mode of the single, infinite substance that is God or nature. The man who truly understands this is liberated from the illusions of free will and individual separateness. 2. The illusion of freedom, the falling stone and the web of causation. Spinoza's thought experiment about the falling stone is one of the most devastating and sublime illustrations of this perspective. He wrote, "A stone set in motion by an external cause communicates its motion to another, and, if it were conscious, would think it was moving entirely by its own free will. And this is the human illusion of freedom, which consists only in this, that men are conscious of their desires and ignorant of the causes that determine them. This is grandeur of thought in its most humbling form. The mind capable of this conception must be able to stand outside itself, to see the human being not as a privileged agent, but as a part of the infinite chain of causation that constitutes the universe. It requires an almost inhuman objectivity, a willingness to dethrone the ego from its imagined sovereignty. The ordinary mind clings to its sense of free will because it cannot bear the vertigo of this perspective. The towering soul, however, embraces it. It sees the self as a wave on the ocean of being, a momentary ripple in the eternal flux of nature. This is not a cause for despair, but for a sublime acceptance, an intellectual amor fati. The ability to see oneself entangled in the web of causation, to situate oneself in the background of the entire cosmos. This is a hallmark of grandeur of thought. It is the capacity for a kind of intellectual self-transcendence, a metaphysical humility that is the precondition for all true wisdom. The man who has achieved this perspective can no longer be moved by the petty concerns of the marketplace or the anxious chatter of the crowd. He has seen the whole, and the whole has reordered his soul. 3. The philosophical architectural, Hegel and the vast cathedral of thought. In Hegel, we find another manifestation of the same impulse, the drive to systematize, to architect. Hegel's grandeur of thought lies in his audacious attempt to comprehend the entirety of reality, history, nature, logic, art, religion, philosophy, as a single, self-unfolding process. His work is a vast cathedral of thought, a monument to the power of the human mind to impose conceptual order upon the chaos of existence. To read Hegel is to witness a mind that refuses to be contained by the particular. It constantly ascends to the universal, seeking the whole in every part. This is precisely the Longinian capacity to dwell among high things. Hegel's vision of the absolute, the world's spirit, realizing itself through the dialectic of history, is a conception of almost incomprehensible scope. It is sublime not in its beauty, but in its sheer intellectual audacity. It is the thunderbolt of a mind that dared to think the totality, to hold the entire sweep of human history and cosmic development in a single conceptual embrace. 4. The existential spiritual, Buddha and the truth of suffering. The sublime is not limited to the Western or the philosophical. In the Buddha, we find grandeur of thought expressed as a spiritual diagnosis of staggering profundity and simplicity. The first noble truth, life is suffering, dukkha, is not a pessimistic complaint, but a sublime insight into the fundamental nature of conditioned existence. The capacity to articulate this truth required a mind that had penetrated beyond the surface pleasures and distractions of life to perceive its underlying structure. It required a moral and intellectual seriousness that refused to look away from the reality of impermanence, decay, and death. The Buddha's gaze was fixed upon the deepest stratum of human experience, and what he saw there he spoke without ornament. All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. This is not a rhetorical flourish. It is an act of sublime perception. It is the echo of a soul that has transcended the petty and confronted the essential. The Buddha's insight is a thunderbolt that shatters the complacent dream of permanence in which ordinary consciousness slumbers. 5. The imaginative poetic, the archaeologist, and the ruins of time. The example of the imaginative archaeologist is particularly poignant. Here we see grandeur of thought as an act of imaginative reconstruction. The ordinary observer sees a pile of stones. The towering soul sees a city, a civilization, a world of human hopes and fears now returned to dust. This is the sublime as melancholic vision. The archaeologist who, standing in the ruins, can summon forth the image of the past, is performing an act of mental time travel. He is collapsing centuries, seeing the ephemerality of human achievement, and yet, paradoxically, affirming the enduring power of the human spirit that created it. This requires a mind that dwells with mortality and eternity simultaneously. It sees the particular ruin under the aspect of the universal truth, sic transit gloria mundi, thus passes the glory of the world. This is the sublime as elegy, a vision that transforms decay into a meditation on the human condition itself. 6. The natural and the metaphysical, Nietzsche's mountains and Leibniz's question. The invocation of Nietzsche, wandering the mountain peaks, is not merely biographical, it is emblematic. The sublime is not confined to the mind. It is also a quality of the world that the great soul seeks out and resonates with. The vastness of mountains, the silence of high altitudes, the sheer scale of nature, these are objective correlatives of grandeur of thought. Nietzsche fled the petty squabbles of the lowlands, both literally and metaphorically, to dwell among heights that matched the elevation of his own spirit. The mountain inspires awe because it makes the self feel small, yet simultaneously exalts the mind capable of comprehending its magnitude. It is the external landscape that mirrors the internal architecture of the towering soul. And this brings us to Leibniz, whose question, "Why is there something rather than nothing?" is perhaps the purest expression of grandeur of thought in the entire history of philosophy. This is the foundational question of metaphysics, and it is sublime in its absolute scope. To ask this question is to step outside of everything, outside of the universe, outside of time, outside of one's own existence, and to demand a reason for the whole. It is the ultimate act of intellectual transcendence. The ordinary mind is too busy navigating the demands of daily life to even notice the mystery of existence itself. The towering soul cannot look away from it. This question is the thunderbolt that shatters the complacency of the everyday and reveals the abyss of being beneath our feet. Conclusion: the unity of the sublime vision and the countercurrent of our age. In each of these examples, Einstein, Spinoza, Hegel, Buddha, the archaeologist, Nietzsche, Leibniz, we see the same fundamental capacity, the ability to transcend the particular, the personal, and the temporal, and to perceive reality from a higher, more comprehensive vantage point. This is megalophrosynē. It is the natural gift of the towering soul, and it is the only true source of the sublime. This is not a skill that can be taught. It is a way of being that is given to a rare few, and it is precisely this gift that makes the sublime possible, for as Longinus wrote, sublimity is the echo of a great soul. The echo presupposes the original sound, the thunderclap of a consciousness that has touched the eternal. In our age of the last man and das Man, of digital chatter and spiritual flattening, this gift is more rare than ever. But it has not vanished. It persists in the solitary minds that refuse the current of their time, that look to the cosmos and ask Leibniz's question, that wander the mountain peaks of thought and bring back not answers, but awe. It persists wherever a human being, standing before the mystery of existence, finds within themselves the grandeur to echo it back. The Longinian sublime in our age is therefore a countercurrent. It is a force that moves against the flow of Das Man, the contentment of the last man, and the engineered chatter of social applications. It remains the possession of the great towering soul, because only such a soul has the capacity for the inner weight required to conceive it and the courage to bear the solitude its conception demands. Longinus's treatise is therefore not just about literature. It is a testament to the belief that language, at its absolute limit, becomes a conduit for the transcendent, proving that the human mind can conceive, and for a moment embody, something godlike. It whispers in the libraries, the laboratories, the artist studios, and the silent chambers of conscience. It is not found in the daily news, but in the eternal questions that the daily news, in its fleeting panic, occasionally and accidentally stumbles upon. It is not heard in the clamour of the marketplace, but in the silence of the mountain peak. It is not spoken in the language of the crowd, but in the solitary voice of the soul that has ascended beyond the common current of its time. To perceive it requires what Longinus demanded from the start, not a better technique, but a grander spirit, a natural, rare, and towering gift that elevates a few above the common current of their time, allowing them to echo, for a moment, a truth that is beyond time itself. And in that echo, the rest of humanity may, if only for an instant, catch a glimpse of the heights to which the human spirit can ascend, and remember, however faintly, the grandeur it was always meant to inhabit.